Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Biology Career Insights. I'm your host, Dr. Manish Kumar, and today we have truly inspiring guests joining us, Dr. Pedro Velica. Dr. Velica is an expert in immune cell engineering, specializing in CAR-T cells, CAR-Tregs, CAR-NK, and TCR-T cells, with an impressive track record in both academia and industry. His journey has taken him from pioneering research in T-cell engineering for oncology to leading groundbreaking projects at AstraZeneca, where he played a key role in advancing CAR-T cell therapies for autoimmune diseases like IBD or type 1 diabetes. Currently, he serves as a lead scientist in cell and gene therapy at CCRM Nordic, where he continues to push the boundaries of immune cell therapies in Nordics. But that's not all. Dr. Velica is also a science cartoonist and the creator of Pedromics, where he blends creativity with data visualization to make complex scientific concepts more engaging and accessible. In today's episode, we'll dive into his remarkable career journey, explore the evolving landscape of cell and gene therapy, and gain insights into the skills and mindset needed to succeed in this field. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Pedro Velica to the show. So, Pedro, welcome to the BCI podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Awesome. So let's start from the beginning. Tell us something about yourself. What do you do?
As a job at the moment,
Everything about you. How do you explain about yourself?
everything about me, well, that is a long story. So at the moment, I work as a lead scientist in process development
Mhm.
in a not-for-profit organization in Sweden, in Gothenburg, called CCRM Nordic.
Mhm.
And it's an organization that aims to help other partners, academics, small companies, to commercialize their cell and gene therapy. So the advanced uh, therapies that we keep hearing about, for example, CAR-T cells.
Mhm.
That's
Awesome.
that's my current job. So I live in Gothenburg. I live here with my wife and my two daughters, and trying to enjoy the Swedish lifestyle.
Wow, very nice. But that's like your serious work, right? But you have a very amazing side of yourself, and that is Pedromics. And perhaps that is one thing that caught my attention, and that's how I got in touch with you. So tell us more about Pedromics.
I'll share something with you. I've been a scientist for I guess professionally for about 20 years. And I'd say about 90% of the times I've been invited to speak is about my cartoons and not about my science, which I'm okay with, perfectly fine. It's just that it's funny because it's my side gig, if you,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So I've always done cartoons and drawings since I was a child, and once I became a scientist, the two things kind of merged together. And was it 2013? So just over 10 years ago, I started publishing the cartoons online, initially on Facebook, then on Instagram. And they're very science focused and they're very, relaxed. They're kind of jokes and they're not, serious scientific illustrations. And I think people enjoy that. They're sort of like fun ways to engage with science, but I'm not trying to be educational. Sometimes I just have a very silly joke I want to put out in the world just for my own amusement. And I'm happy that there are other people who enjoy it.
Wow. And I must confess, I really loved all your cartoons, So the way you saw, like the post that I did on LinkedIn kind of almost went viral. And it is so amazing that you end up, this age of internet, you end up meeting the real authors. So, it was such a pleasure, that accidentally I kind of found this piece, Paranoid Organoid. And then here I am talking to you. So this is so amazing.
There we
Yes.
go.
Yes, absolutely. So we will dig deep, So we want to know your career journey so far. Tell us where you were born, how you chose biology, your educational background, everything.
Okay. So I'm originally from Portugal, from the south of Portugal, from a
Mhm.
tiny region called the Algarve, but a lot of people in Europe know it because it's where tourists like to go, find beaches, grilled fish, the whole thing. I guess as a child, I was always very curious, but not particularly saying, I'm not one of those people that it was like, oh, when I was 3 years old, I decided I want to be a scientist. Not at all. I just kept going through the education system, kept enjoying some things more than others, science in particular, but also arts.
Mhm,
Uh, Came to a point where I had to decide, do I want to do art or do I want to do science? And I thought, science feels like there's more options ahead.
mhm,
It was a very pragmatic choice.
mhm.
And honestly, drawing is a hobby, something I do to relax. I didn't want to have that as the way that I would sustain myself. So I went to study science, and then later on, I got a degree in biology from the University of Lisbon.
Mhm.
And soon after that, I finished my degree, and I thought I want to go abroad. I've done Portugal. I want to go see something else. And there was at the time, maybe still around, a EU grant, I guess, which allows young people to go and try to work. You could go to a company, you could go to a lab anywhere in Europe. And this was sort of like my springboard to becoming an immigrant. So I went to Imperial College for 1 year, work in a cancer research lab, and it was like, this is it. This is what I want to do.
Wow.
Then from
Was it Erasmus, Pedro? Was it Erasmus or?
No, no. So Erasmus is more for people doing their undergraduates. This
Mhm,
was sort of a transitional. It's like you finish your degree and you want to try and work in a company abroad. You want to try and work in a lab abroad, and it just funds you for a year. It's not a lot of money, but it was enough,
mhm.
uh, you know, to go and do this. And it kind of like, yeah, put me on the mindset that, you know, working in the lab, being abroad, and that was 20 years ago. This September 2025 will be 20 years since I've been an immigrant.
Yeah, time flies. I mean, very similar story also for me. But just coming back to, your choices in science, I mean, you mentioned it was pragmatic, and I understand that. But why biology and why not other sciences?
So the way the educational system used to work in Portugal is that you have to choose at a very young age. You sort of have to specialize when you're like 14 years old.
Mhm, mhm,
And it's sort of like it was science generically versus arts generically. So I didn't commit to any particular part of science.
mhm,
It was only when I had to choose a degree in university that I decided, okay, I really like biology. I really love genetics. I thought, okay, this is very, it's interesting. It feels like it's got applications. And this is how I ended up in biology, simply because at the time it was what I was really into. But again, it wasn't. I'm not one of those people that was, had a master plan from the day I was born. It was I kind of go with the wind.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning, normally, like, especially career in pure sciences, so people who pursue pure sciences, they have some idea that, okay, down the path, I have to become a scientist. But it should necessarily not be like that. So many people think that, okay, I'll pursue my bachelor's and then we may move to business or whatever, right? But for you, like, I think it was the stint at Imperial College that uh, made you kind of more focused towards building your career further in science, or how was it?
Um, I'd like to say that I had that vision at the time, but most of my career decisions have been done through either inertia or factors unrelated to work.
Mhm,
I think in that case, it was sort of had the opportunity to then do a PhD
mhm,
at the University of Birmingham in the UK.
mhm,
And it was again part of a EU-funded network, and you were supposed to travel between labs, and it was very much this pan-European project. And I've always been very much into that. I feel like internationalism and people exchanging cultures and working in other environments. So I thought, okay, sounds good. I
mhm.
didn't know much about the topic. It was cancer research. It was to do with nuclear receptors, and I had a blast. A lot of people have these terror stories of PhDs. I really, really enjoyed mine. It was fun. Traveled a lot. Had a really amazing supervisor who I consider still today a good friend, someone I admire. Lots of good friends coming from that period, and then just stayed in science. And after that, went to UCL,
Mhm.
back to London, and this is when I got into immunology and CAR-T cells and T-cell engineering, all these kind of things. And after that, again, this is where the inertia started not working out so well for me. I was like, okay, I'm in science, I'm in academia. I want to become a team lead. I want to run my own research lab, but I wasn't really doing the correct things.
Mhm.
So I decided, okay, I'll move to Sweden. Karolinska sounds good. There was an opportunity to go there. Uh, and I just really enjoyed living in Stockholm at the time. And I just, again, stayed for a while. And it was only after the pandemic that I realized, no, actually, I think there are careers beyond academia. I should try something else. And I moved to AstraZeneca, where I worked at the cell therapy department. This
Mhm.
is, you know, anything from CAR-T cells to stem cell therapies. And honestly, I think I should have made this transition earlier because it is more fun than I expected.
Wow, fantastic. Yes. And I also realized that, so science doesn't need to be very limited to academia, but you can have, fun also outside academia doing science. And that story is resonating to me. You mentioned that you worked on CAR T cell. So for our audience, maybe you can elaborate a bit on CAR T cell because it's a very hot field, right? So
Sure. I guess your audience is like pan science, not necessarily
yes.
or biology
Mainly
focused.
biology, mainly biologists, but so I'm trying to make it pan science, but explain in a way that even say a school going biologist can understand this.
Okay. Yeah, because
Mhm.
I was going to say that's a dangerous question to ask someone like me because I will go into every intricate detail.
But
Like
go,
you
I
need to
mean,
know your audience.
yeah,
It's not
we can
funny.
have all levels. We will go as deep as you can. Yeah,
I'll try to make it the way I pitch it to my family back home.
absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Which is this. So we have these amazing cells in our immune system called T cells, and they're the closest thing that we have to nanorobots. So
Mhm.
they have this amazing ability to find the wrong thing in your body and kill it. They can kind of like travel everywhere in your body and kill what's wrong. So this will be cells infected by viruses or cancer cells. And the question has always been, how can we use these cells in our favor? And CAR T cell engineering is essentially you use a modified virus to introduce a new receptor on the cell surface to basically make the cell do what you want. So, for example, make it kill cancer cells. You take
Mhm.
it out of the patient's body, and then you infect with this modified virus. You change the gene. You introduce a new gene, makes the cell now recognize cancer. You put it back into the patient, and this supercharged T cell now works for you. They have this amazing ability that they can make copies of themselves. So if the cancer is big, they'll just grow to match their cancer. Once the cancer is gone, they disappear, but they always leave something behind. And these are sort of like your memory cells. So if the cancer comes back, the T cells come back as well, the CAR T cells.
You
So
mean
it's
the
sort of like it's a
T memory cells come back, or how's it?
well, they never go away. They stay in your body. It's the same mechanism that allows you to be vaccinated. So you're vaccinated, your immune system responds. T cells are a really important part of it. They will then remember this infection. Some of these cells stay behind, and if another infection comes, they will quickly respond. And this is different to any conventional drug that you need to redose every single time. With living drugs like CAR T cell therapy, the cells, the drug itself will adapt to what's happening. So if you're fighting cancer with CAR T cells, they will grow and kill the cancer, then they will contract and stay in your body. And if the cancer happens to grow back, they will do the same job again. You don't need to get redrugged. So it's a beautiful thing, bit more complex than a regular drug to produce, but very promising in terms of the results that it has yielded.
Amazing, amazing. So, I mean, I of course kind of follow the field of immuno-oncology because it's quite hot. But there are also like, I mean, you explain it in a very simple and very like, as if everything works like charm. But in science how complicated things are, right? So it's not that straightforward. So what are the current challenges, in the development of this therapy?
I just today I had this conversation with my father because he saw in the news a very promising CAR T cell not a study actually clinical work that's been done in Spain, and the headlines say 50% complete remission, and people see this and go, this is amazing. what the headline maybe doesn't explain is that it's in a specific cancer type. So CAR T cells have been a tremendous success in specific types of leukemia and lymphoma because we know exactly what we need to target for these cancers. So we can put uh, uh, the CAR, the chimeric antigen receptor, on the T cell that matches that. And we know that it doesn't really affect the rest of the body. For other types of cancer, it hasn't been so easy to find targets that are specific to the cancer that we can use in the same way. For example, for solid tumors, it's been very difficult. Also, it doesn't seem that these cells are infiltrating solid tumors as easily. So there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of finding new ways to redirect the cells to target the cancer, but also to make them survive inside of a cancer. And I guess the other big challenge, and it's something that I've been working more recently since I moved to industry, is the fact that these therapies are so expensive. I think a CAR T cell therapy at this moment is going for about half €500,000, which is unattainable. Like it's a strain for any purse. So the big challenge at the moment is to try to make it more accessible.
Affordable. And what makes it more expensive? Is it like the cost of production, or is it the
Absolutely. Cost of production. The fact that these are individual therapies, so you have to take the cells from the patient itself, take it to a clean room, and then you need specialized equipment, specialized staff. Everything has to be done in very clean environments. There's a lot of quality control that needs to occur. So it very quickly becomes very expensive. It's impossible to make at scale, so you cannot just scale up because everyone needs to make their own drug. So all of that combined means that the price has been very high. But there's been attempts recently to try to make it cheaper by simplifying the methods, by using less complex devices, maybe to forgo some of the tests that maybe are not as important, but price is coming down.
got it? So you mean it will follow the Moore's law, like kind of, you think?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that applies to this particular therapy unless someone cracks the code and manages to make a sort of universal therapy that you can just take off the shelf, and that would definitely accelerate it. But at the moment, it feels like it will never be super cheap, but it can definitely be cheaper.
Cheaper. I mean, so one of the challenges that I understood from our conversation is finding the right antigen, right? Like, for example, you mentioned that in leukemia, you can identify the antigen, and then if you identify the antigen, you basically can target it, right? So that's one challenge. Uh, but apart from that, I heard that there's also like, the patient it can also go wrong, right? Because many of the clinical trials can fail and stuff like that. And what are the reasons to failure of these trials? Even if you, for example, identify the right antigen, there are many reasons that it can fail, the therapy can fail. And what are these reasons?
So it has happened that the antigen is actually quite good, like the one that is being targeted in leukemia and lymphoma, which is primarily CD19, which, as you probably heard, is a B cell marker. But as in any treatment for cancer, cancers are very plastic. They can lose the antigen, and then in that case, you do have escape. Uh, you know, there are situations in which you produce the cells, but they're not in great condition because they're coming from a patient that's already been through several rounds of chemotherapy, not in the greatest health. So the starting material is not great. So it's hard to even generate the cells. And then you put it into a patient that maybe is also not in great health, and the cells are not able to do their job just because of the nature of the disease. In solid tumors, it appears that one of the main hindrances is actually entering the tumor. So solid tumors become physical barriers and also molecular barriers, as you know, from checkpoint blockade immunotherapy. They have their own, they co-opt other parts of the immune system to hide themselves. And that is still true against CAR T cells. So people are trying to combine several types of immunotherapy. So having CAR T cells and checkpoint blockade immunotherapy at the same time. And again, like every cancer research from the last 60 years, we're like chipping in. We're just chipping it uh, a little bit every time to try and uh, increase survival rates.
Amazing. So, so I mean, I live near Heidelberg, which is close to Mannheim, where I live, and you have one of the best cancer research centers here, which is DKFZ. And I'm sure like Karolinska is also one among the top. But when you meet doctors like oncologists, they really have idea on what is going on in the, research labs. And it is so puzzling for me. So how do you feel as a scientist who has already worked in Karolinska? Why is there such a gap? Because doctors have no clue what's happening with the CAR-TC. And this is like so I had a colleague and his husband is actually undergoing skin cancer. And she was mentioning, because she's also a scientist, she was mentioning exactly this fact that, when she interacted with the doctors still go with chemo, radiation, and everything. So one thing I understand is the costs, of course, as you mentioned. But even for people who can afford this kind of expensive therapies, doctors have no clue. And have you, like, what do you have to say on this?
Um, I personally don't have much interaction with clinicians working on actually oncological patients, but I imagine there must be a range of, some that are very set on their ways and are not maybe keeping up with the current advances. But I'm sure there's a lot that are on top of what's happening. I mean, CAR T-cell therapy has been approved by the FDA 2017. So it's not an experimental therapy anymore.
It's approved
Uh,
one.
it's an approved one. So it's definitely part of it. The main hurdle might be that it's too expensive. And
Mhm.
maybe, especially in Europe where we have national health systems, maybe the cost benefits that has been applied to it is not justified that it should be used for everyone.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, I've recently actually spent time with some friends in Finland, in Helsinki, and one of my friends is an oncologist, and she had just started working in this department, and she said, "Oh, I have worked with patients that are receiving CAR T cell therapy, so
Wow.
it is happening.
Mhm,
It's just
mhm,
that maybe they really need to weigh the probability of the therapy working against the costs."
got it. Got it. Um, Coming back again to this CAR T cell therapy, because it's quite interesting and quite fascinating for me. So, which are the companies that have successfully, for example, which cancer types can be now treated by this CAR T cell therapy? Yes.
So as far as I'm aware, clinically approved, it's
Mhm,
only for B cell derived leukemias and lymphomas. So it's going to be any leukemia and lymphoma that expresses CD19. I think maybe CD20 and BCMA are
mhm,
the other two very successful targets. I'm not entirely sure which ones are actually approved, but this has been it so far. And when you see headlines saying against 50%
mhm,
success
mhm,
rate, it's usually this is what they're talking about. Anything else that is coming up, it
mhm.
hasn't yet been approved, so it's we have to wait and see.
Got you. And you mentioned about this solid tumors. So of course, one thing is like, crossing the barrier. What are the other challenges? Because, and also I would like to ask you, because you are also like a cancer biologist, so why do many cancers, they relapse, like they come again? Why is that?
That is that is the $1 million question, right? It's like
Mm.
how sometimes the patient seems to have been completely cured and it comes back again. It, I think it goes down to the plasticity of cancer, right? They're
Mhm,
genomically unstable. They are able to grow clonally. So you think you got rid of 99.9% of your cancer with your chemotherapy, with your targeted drugs, but there's a handful of cells that stay behind. They go undetected for years. And the ones that grow are the ones that have resistance because that's why they survived in the first place. So it feels like once the cancer has adapted to a hostile therapeutic environment for them, and once they learn how to move around the body, once they learn to metastasize, it is very difficult to get hold of them.
mhm, mhm.
The CAR T cell therapy works because that antigen is shared by the entire cancer population, but only takes for a handful of those cells to lose that antigen for the therapy to not work anymore. So that's why we need to hit it with as many approaches as
Antigens.
we can.
And is it
Antigens, other things.
so? Is it also like you target just one antigen, or you have set of antigens against which you kind of you make the receptor, like, or you engineer the receptor? So how's it?
So the original therapy is against one antigen because it was, again, very experimental. One thing I haven't mentioned is that the CAR, the chimeric antigen receptor, is a completely artificial protein. So it has the outer part of an antibody, and
Mhm.
it's linked to essentially the signaling machinery of what the regular T cell receptor would be. So it sort of mimics an antibody on one hand, but it delivers the signal to the T cell as it should. And initially, people just took an antibody that was very well known against CD19 or CD20. We knew where the target was, and what if we make now T cells recognize this antigen? And this is where CAR T cell therapy comes from. Of course, now what you just proposed is something that is being pursued, which is maybe we should be targeting multiple antigens. So now you have these dual CARs. So you can have one CAR with two antibody domains, one for one antigen, one for the other. So if there's escape from one, you still can target this one. There's a ton of other approaches. If I start talking about this, I'll never shut up. But none of those are clinically approved yet. So it's all experimental.
So, but a lot is going in the field, right? Like it's most of
A
pharma
lot.
companies. A lot. Wow.
Yeah,
So
academically and in industry.
yes, absolutely. And that brings to other, important question, because I mean, most of my viewers are actually PhD students, and many of them they struggle with transitioning the career, like like you had a smooth transition from say academia to industry. So for people who kind of who are working in the lab currently and they want to transition to say the industrial roles, right, like especially that of a scientist in R&D, what would be your advice to them? Or you tell me your journey, like how did it come
Yeah,
that you want to, yeah, so and then we'll dig deeper
and,
into advice.
I can only tell my journey. I don't know how much of advice can be taken from that. Um, I mentioned earlier in our conversation that I tend to move a bit passively in my career without like actively trying to do something. The only time I've actually wanted to make a move and I did it was the transition to industry. It worked.
Wow.
It was the first time I actually said, okay, I'm going to do this, and it happened. But it was also a lot of luck because I knew I wanted to work with CAR T cells, and I was looking primarily within Sweden, but elsewhere in Europe was also fine. And it just so happened that this department had just opened in AstraZeneca. They were working with CAR T cells, and the job advert that I found was essentially my CV. It was
So
one of
it was a
those,
perfect match, kind of.
almost a perfect match. I went the
Wow.
in 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 uh in that job, the application of CAR T cells was not for oncology; it was for autoimmunity.
Mhm.
But that was the only mismatch, and it was a fun mismatch because that meant I learned about autoimmunity. But it was sort of like I kept looking. I was looking for a few months, and then that showed up, and I saw the ad, and I thought at least I must be called for an interview because that's such a good overlap. And I was lucky enough. They like me, I like them, and that's how I made my move. And it was great.
So that is a very, as I said, smooth transition, right? Like you find a perfect match. Yes, I understand that that can happen. That happens like one in say 1,000 cases, right?
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to give any advice because
Yeah,
there was a lot of.
that's totally fine, Pedro. But you would have realized that I mean there are reasons that people leave academia, right? It's not that the research in the academic environment is bad. In fact, you have more say intellectual freedom, so to say, because you're not like bounded by say profit, but you're bounded
Mhm.
by more like intellectual curiosity. But according to you, who has worked from like on the both sides, what are the down like sides right now in academia? Your perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I'll pick up on what you said about. I think what you said is what people always told me, and I honestly believed it, which was that in academia you have more freedom to operate. It's all about curiosity, while in industry it's all about what about pursuing profit. What I ended up finding in academia is that that freedom is actually more restricted than it's advertised, because we're so bound to the metrics of academia, publishing in high impact factor journals, getting the grants, that people end up just kind of chasing the topics that are more likely to give them those things. And the idea that you just freely go and I'm going to investigate something out of my pure curiosity, that is such a like 19th century view of science. So like, I'm Charles Darwin, I'm going to jump on a ship and I'm going to go to the Galapagos. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. It's a job and people are just trying to do their best. It's unfortunately, I'm not going to say science is underfunded necessarily, but the ratio of people working in academic research versus the money that's available, that ratio has changed, at least since I was an academic.
No,
The years
absolutely.
that-
And absolutely, Pedro. And more so what's happening in the US, for example, a lot of NIH grants have
Yeah.
been cut. And this is
It's-
absolutely, and this is not like your time, my time, or new generation, old generation. So the moment, I have entered science, I've always listening to the same stories. Oh, there's a funding cut or whatever. So essentially, and few labs, are very well funded, but other labs are not. And perhaps rightly so or whatever. So I don't want to go into the politics of it. But, scientists, as you were saying, that they do not have that intellectual freedom as we perceive in academia, right? Because essentially, they are also limited by grants, and the pressure of publishing is also so much that they cannot really pursue that freedom. So
yeah, I think one of the things that pushed me off, at least in terms of my enthusiasm for academic research, was seeing so many people that were so desperate to get the grant, get the paper, get the position, that they were compromising on.
reality, right?
But maybe not so harsh. Maybe it will be.
It depends
it's
on the
different.
group. So,
It's under pressure, I'd say, due to
oh,
financial constraints and career pressures.
all right. So that's like more diplomatic way of putting that,
Yes.
and I appreciate that. That's not a problem. So what are the benefits of working in, say, industry, and what are the good sides and what are the bad sides according to you? So not like particularly AstraZeneca or your other company that you're currently working, in general.
Again, this is from obviously my point of view. I'd say the benefit for me is main benefits is that I feel like you're working closer to the final product. So the thing that's actually going to make it to the patient. So it sounds like a cliche, but it does feel that we're a bit closer. It's a lot more about
Impact, the real
Yeah,
impact.
but it's not so much. I felt in academia many times we were chasing the p-value. It's just, we just need to get the p-value so we can get the paper. And in industry, it's more like it needs to work. Like this needs to be for real. So it's you chase that more, and I'm okay with that. I actually prefer that. There's also the aspect that it's a more regular works situation, more labor condition in a way, in the sense that in academia you're sort of like working for yourself. Like you pressure yourself to work on weekends, because if you don't work, your project doesn't advance. So you sort of like so almost like you own your own business and you feel guilty for not working all the time. It's more regular. It's more like a regular job in industry. You do your job, but you're part of a team. I had one of the episodes I had in academia that really opened my eyes was at one point the PI, the team leader of a team next to where I was, he died. And the PhD students and the postdocs, their lab disappeared. So because the main person died, the lab doesn't exist anymore. They couldn't finish their PhD, so they had to move to another lab where they had to adjust their projects. And I was thinking, well, in industry and any job, if someone dies, you just get someone else. I mean, it's a tragedy, of course, but it's such a weird situation that it's so focused on individual. So I felt refreshing coming to industry, the fact that it's a regular work environment. Like you work, you love what you do, but when you finish, you finish. You have your weekend, you have your evening with your family, and then you come back and you work some more, and you work as a team. That was very good.
No, very,
In
very, very.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I think you're.
I'll just add one obvious negative point, which have actually had to endure it sooner than I expected, which is in industry, as you mentioned, it's all about the profit. It's all about where the direction is. I joined AstraZeneca to be in a cell therapy department, which was an investment that AstraZeneca had done around the beginning of COVID, and they were very excited about it. But there was a leadership change and a strategy change, so the department was closed.
Yeah,
And
this
that's
can
it.
happen. This can happen.
That's it. I thought, okay, I know it happens, but I thought I would have a couple of years to kind of figure my way out. But no, it was like that. One day we were called, they go like, we're not doing this anymore. So if you want to stay in the company, you have to go and do something else, or you find another job. And it was my incentive to move on and to go to my current situation, which is continuing to work with CAR-T cells, which
CAR
is
T
what I love.
cells. Perfect. I think here you raised a very important point that, so I think industry is more close to reality. So also to fake is not that easy in industry, right? Because your incentives are clear. It has to work. In academia, we say, so the Lancet paper published that, 70% of the life sciences product like papers are irreproducible. Do you think because the incentives are wrong? The incentives are just kind of you churn papers, right? And nobody is going to kind of spend their precious grants in verifying the facts. And that's why, and because postdocs are under tremendous pressure, also PhDs, so they become publishing machine. And somewhere I think, it's the policy makers has to come with a policy that actually places the incentives at the right place, as it happens in the industry, because it's related to the technology, and you cannot fake technology. It has to work or it will not work, you know and in academia, you see the incentives are just high impact papers, and you see what's happening with papers. So tell us something about this.
No. I think you nailed it. That's it. The incentives are absolutely wrong. I think one of the main problems that lead to this reproducibility crisis is the fact that you come up with a very exciting scientific discovery. The journal absolutely loves that. It gets published. If I go behind and I find the same thing, that's not a hot topic anymore, so I don't get published. So replication is not stimulated. But more importantly, if I try to replicate and I fail, it's very hard to publish that, because the onus is, oh, maybe you did it wrong, and maybe 20 people are doing it and no one can replicate. But because the exciting science has been published, then it stays. So unless we start again allowing for more negative data to be published, we're going to continue to see this. But I'll add one thing: the interaction between academia and industry is very interesting, because at least in my whatever 3 years of experience in industry, nothing new is being developed in industry. Everything is coming from academia. It's just being picked and then improved. So we absolutely need academia to come up with the new stuff, because industry completely survives of what academia produces. So it's an
Absolutely.
important interaction.
Absolutely. No. I'm never against academic research. So academia is
Mm.
good, just that the incentives needs to be at the right place. That's my only kind of ask. And plus the working condition needs to be improved, because
Yes. Yeah. Salary wise, stability for people to, yeah, I agree.
yes,
That was another main reason to look for jobs elsewhere.
got it. Now coming to the fun side of you. So, so you have this two heart, one of a scientist, hardcore scientist, and one of a very nice, humorous communicator, So I must say, absolutely amazing. So when I saw all the Pedromics, I could just smile. So this is brilliant. So as you said,
Thank
like
you.
it's so witty and it's so scientific at the same time. So it's like that combination of scientific humor. How did you come up with this idea of Pedromics?
Again, I was already drawing
Mhm.
before, and the natural thing was to now draw about the thing I think about the most, which is science. And a lot of these cartoons, they come up, when you're in the lab and you're doing, you're working with a colleague and you're waiting for an incubation to end, and you just, talking nonsense. You're just making jokes, or you find an enzyme that has a funny name, so you make a joke. And I thought, okay, maybe this could be a cartoon. And it kind of a lot of it evolved from like silly conversations I have with my colleagues. Sometimes it's just that I've always been a very visual learner. I would rather learn through videos and pictures than through text.
Mhm.
And I find when I do my scientific presentations, I usually incorporate either cartoons or just like nice images. And people often come to me at the end and say, I really like it. This is how I prefer to learn.
Mhm.
So I think that's where it gets a bit of traction, is that people like visual things. And if you make it funny, it hacks, I guess.
Awesome. So you never planned for this. This was coming naturally, right? Like you always enjoyed drawing, and then because I saw that you have a full-fledged Pedromics website, right? And to the audience, I must say that you should just go and visit his website, maybe order some merchandise, so because Pedro also offers that. So tell us more about this, Pedro.
It it just evolves very naturally. So I have not that any so it's my typical MO, right? Just kind of like go with the flow. So it started by starting a Facebook page, and
Mhm.
I was a bit shocked of how much audience it got straight away,
Mhm.
because obviously the algorithms in social media are very good at finding niches. So you connect the people who like this
Mhm.
specific unusual thing. I mean, it also lets people find, flat Earth conspiracy theories. So it works for in all directions.
All direction, absolutely.
So it worked out for me. It maybe
It's
didn't
a
work out for the whole.
reinforcing thing, right? So whatever you like will be, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So it picked up an audience, and with that you start doing more things, and then people say, oh, could you make this into a t-shirt? I really like to have this as a t-shirt or a mug. So I found the website that does that. So that's where my merch is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then people start asking me, can you do a cartoon from my PhD thesis book? Let's do it. I get requests sometimes for people to do illustrations for journal covers.
Mhm. Mhm.
It just happens naturally, and it's been a lot of fun. I have no commitment, no pressure to do it, so that's why it's fun.
So it's your side hustle and you're not dependent on this, for your living. So, I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, so there is a quote, by, I don't know by whom, but somebody wrote that science is fun till you have to earn a living out of it, you know? So because then that then it no more remains fun, right? So I think you are still having fun with this part because
Yeah.
your living doesn't depend on this. So everything is uh but there are many like guys that I met, like they really they want to plan their career in science communication or say science illustration, stuff like that. So how did you get the first gig? For example, a journal reaching to you, how did they know you? Was it through your website or you reached out to them? What was your strategy behind it?
I think it's essentially because I built a social media
Mhm.
following. I don't know if that's the correct word.
Yes,
Like
yeah, it's like a club, a
audience.
community audience. Yes, exactly.
Okay, and inevitably someone saw something they liked and went, "Can I use this?" Or "Can you make actually one specifically for my topic?" So
Mhm.
it was through that. Is essentially people contacted me, and it got to a point that it was frequent enough that I created a special email just for that,
Wow.
uh, so that I can get all the requests on the same spot, because I'm quite forgetful sometimes.
Mhm.
And it's fun because it's mostly people within biology, but not always. But fields of biology I know nothing about. So for every of these little projects, I have to go to Wikipedia and learn and look at pictures, and you always come out of it knowing something else.
Wow. So that's even like a fantastic journey, right? Because it kind of reinforces more learning, right? So, yeah, and you are a learning machine, right? You have been doing all this CAR-T this research, that research. As a PhD, you are a learning machine.
Exactly. Anyone who's in science is doing this because they enjoy, they're curious, right? No one's doing this because to earn money, right? It's to because you enjoy it.
Absolutely, absolutely amazing. All right. So now coming back to, people who watch, like the students, what advice, how would you advise, given your very smooth career, I would say, you didn't face that hurdle, but, you will realize, Pedro, that, because at each stage we pivot. So maybe you are kind of bored of science, or active science. You will never be, I think, bored of science as a scientist, but maybe, what you currently do and you want to pivot to, say, another level or do something else. And you will see that you will have challenges at different levels, right? For example, entire cell therapy department closed because of strategic reasons. Then, of course, you have to kind of search for another job or whatever. So, in light of this, what would be your career advice to other budding scientists?
Yeah.
Think about it. Yeah, it's.
I've been on the receiving end of a lot of advice over the years, and I've learned that it's often there's a lot of the survivorship bias effect going on when people give advice. Oh, I did what I loved and it turned out okay. There's a lot of luck involved, and again, I've had luck and I was not so lucky sometimes. Um, I think my advice, not advice, but what I stood for is I told myself very early on, I will never compromise my scientific integrity for a career. So, if I'm being asked to, ignore this experiment so that we can publish it in science, or, don't look at that, just do this because it's what is more likely to give you the grant. I've never done that.
Mhm.
It hasn't worked out for me. Maybe if I wanted to actually have an academic career, but I'm happier that I did it this way. It turned out okay. I love what I'm doing right now, and who knows what the future holds.
Mhm.
But people have different ways to see life. Maybe you really want to climb up a career ladder. Then you need to do all the, networking and rub shoulders with the right people, and, publish in the right journals and get all the grants. If that's you, do that. If you want to have a more, I don't know, if you're a
Happy
bit
life or.
more, not happy necessarily, but if you're more like me, that you don't enjoy doing, it's not natural to you to do those career things, it also works out. So it's still fine.
Yes.
So my advice is just stay true to your nature, and maybe you're lucky.
So
That's
be
not a very good advice.
No, I think that's a brilliant advice. Be authentic to yourself, So, and I've heard that also coming from other scientists, because of course, one thing is to kind of people make all these motivational Instagram reels and that's on a do that, do that, in the age of influencer. But I think, staying true to yourself is really important in terms of like your quality of life, So if you really want to be happy, you cannot fake it with yourself. I kind of agree that you have to be really true to yourself, and so I think what you've also practiced, you have kept the humor side alive by pursuing also something that you enjoy, apart from science. I think that's also a very fun way of living your life, and this podcast is also one of such things that I do just for my kind of my happiness, and I think that way I thought, like, people will learn from you that you can be a successful scientist working for companies like AstraZeneca, going to Imperial College London, and at the same time you can pursue with something like Pedromics, something like science cartoon stuff like that. So
And I'll have to say, a lot of people in science that I've encountered over the years do that. There's a lot of people that have side um, interests that are, people. A lot of people draw. A lot of people do music. People tend to stereotype scientists as this kind of closed off,
serious. Yeah.
serious thing. But I have not found that. There's a lot of people who have multiple talents and interests in science.
Wow, that's amazing. So what apart from Pedromics, what do you do? Tell us more about your hobbies and side things that you do apart from this.
Look, I'm a 40-year-old guy with two young kids. I don't do much. I
You play with your kids, maybe, yeah?
oh most of my free time is hanging out with kids, and I love it. I mean, I think I have the same mentality that they do. I find the same things fun. Both my kids like to draw, so that's something we do together. But there's not a lot of time left after parenting and work. But this is the stage of life. It's just like that for everyone, right? I don't know if
Yes.
you are going to do the same, but it's
Mhm. No, I totally understand that, so having kids is a whole lot of responsibility,
yeah,
right? So, yes.
it's a full-time job that happens to be fun and tiresome at the same time. But yeah, I like to the usual things, the boring things people always say. I like to hike and I like to listen to music and cook and be with my friends. Nothing out of the ordinary.
Got it. Got it. So also another thing, some people will be, so those who will be watching, they will go to your Pedromics website. If not your company website, of course they will. And I highly recommend they should go enjoy. Which kind of services do you offer through Pedromics? Apart from, apart from the illustration, do you also offer, you said you also offer your services to company, for example, so maybe highlight your
Any
services.
So anything that is illustration in the realm of cartoons. So sometimes people approach me and like, can you draw a very technical drawing of my device? It's like that's really not me. I'm more like cells with eyes.
Mhm.
But if that's what you're looking for, I mean, you just need to look at what I have published online. If this is something that is of interest, I'm open to all types of projects. I've done things for companies. I've done things for PhD students. I've done things for teachers for educational purposes. So it's, whatever, as long as it's science and it's uh, fairly humorous, I'll be there.
Awesome. Awesome. So I highly recommend everyone just go visit Pedromics. Yes. Um, one thing, no conversation these days is without bringing AI into picture, right? So has AI made your life a bit easy in terms of Pedromics and in terms of also your kind of, the hardcore science that you do? And how do you
Yeah,
incorporate or leverage on AI?
yeah, and, there's this stereotype that old people don't want to learn new things, and I've always kind of laughed at that. Like, no, I'm always going to adapt. I think AI is where I'm stumbling, as I really generated antibodies against it. I understand the value, but at the same time, I'm seeing so much stuff that I really don't like, and especially in illustrations. So these AI generated illustrations that are soulless and often don't make any sense, and they're generated based on work that is done by real people. I
Absolutely.
just I just feel, yeah, it feels like unless people there's a strong possibility that people get so obsessed about just using AI that all illustrators stop doing their work because why would I do it? Nobody cares. They're just using a AI to do it. That eventually, maybe one day AI will stop working. Maybe AI will just be trained on other AI stuff and it'll just turn into crap. And then
Yeah,
it will turn
it's
right. That's a possibility.
it's such an important point because basically all these AIs are able to give you these pictures because somebody has put the hard work before and they have trained on them, right?
Exactly.
And the soul is, of course, that is a very important. You saw what happened with this. There was a trend that people were putting this Japanese artist. What is his name? I forgot. Like
Yeah, yes, the Studio Ghibli.
yes, exactly. So that went viral, right? Everyone was using,
Yes.
and I got to kind of, read some codes maybe, and his opinion was also very similar to you in the way that, people are like really taking out the soul from the artist,
Yeah.
from the artistry point of view, So, and I tend to agree there. Uh, but there are also a lot of plus side in terms of like efficiency. Says kind of use Perplexity, for example, because it has the citations and stuff like that. You can just go to the source and um, so how do you incorporate AI into your daily work, for example, not in terms of art but in terms of your daily science?
So I've not actively searched for it, but now everything comes with an AI option. So sometimes I will look into it. I've been very, you know, a lot of people are jumping into it. I'm kind of like dipping my toes first. I'm only asking very basic things like, can you help me, you know, draw up a formula for it in Excel to do a thing that I want? But I have colleagues that are doing so much more. So I probably should try to keep up with the times and not be a grumpy old man that refuses uh, to to learn.
Yes.
But I haven't been very
Active. Mm.
active. Exactly.
Mhm,
I,
mhm.
I I think maybe the overt excitement around AI has put me off a bit.
Got you. All right. So, so another question. As you can see, I have a lot of questions, So another question is about resources because, so now you are already done your PhD, postdoc, you've worked in industry. So now you are aware of so many resources that is available, say in terms if somebody is wanting to educate themselves in say CAR T cell therapy field. And also from the artistic point of view, have you leveraged some resources? Because, you got to train yourself, right? To work daily and improve yourself. So if somebody wants to make their career, say example, one, because you have these two fields, I will ask for both. What will be your recommendations?
Um, so I'm going to say something that is again very basic, but
Mhm.
YouTube is an amazing tool for everything.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I think I've learned how do people do this particular type of modification on their images on their illustrations. There's 20,000 tutorials to look at. You just need to choose the one you like the most.
Can
How
you
to
recommend some?
change.
Can you recommend
Also,
some or
I never I'm very my internet browser is so dumb. No, it's dumb. I just find the thing, I see it and I forget it where it came from. So I don't follow any particular channels or anything because the content is just there. You just put the right keywords, you find it. I mean, anything. I've used YouTube to learn how to change the tire of a bike, how to, scale and gut a fish, stuff that maybe, my dad should have taught me, or maybe he did and I wasn't paying attention. So YouTube is an amazing resource for everything.
Mhm.
Uh, for science, every time I'm put into a new topic, usually because I'm having to illustrate something for someone else, Wikipedia. That's my first. People trash Wikipedia. It's great if you for a starting point.
For a starting point, because I must say
Yeah.
that, sometimes it can be, you cannot 100% rely, especially, in this age where
Yeah.
people have the ability to edit it with wrong citation, stuff like that. So, of course, you have to cross check, but it's a good initial
But
starting
again,
point.
as you can tell, I'm not giving very sophisticated tools here
No,
because
I think
what
you're
because
giving
I
a simple, straightforward advice that you practice, and I think I
yeah
like your authenticity.
it,
Yeah, but
it works for me.
Mhm,
But because my favorite way to learn is actually with people, like with talking to
mhm,
people. It's not always possible, but if you can sit down with someone and do real time conversation. I know this is going out of fashion these days to actually talk to people.
no, I think
But
it's very important. Yes,
right.
very important.
So
Yes.
that's if you can find someone that knows something that you don't, just ask. And I'm sure they'll be very happy to tell you about it.
Wow. And Pedro, how can somebody reach you? Of course, I reached out to you on LinkedIn. It so happened. But if somebody wants to reach you, you have your
Uh,
website, you have your email or
so
something?
my cartooning accounts on Facebook, Instagram, well, I think Twitter I haven't, or X or whatever it's called now, I haven't really used it much since it's
Mhm.
in complete meltdown. But any of those platforms, you can message me. It's not guaranteed that I'll always see it because I don't have any apps installed on my phone
Wow.
of that sort to avoid the constant pinging.
Distraction, yeah.
Yes. So the best way is probably through a good old email.
Mhm, mhm,
This is if it's for cartoons, obviously. It's Pedro@pedromics.com. Easy
mhm.
to remember.
Pedro at
I'm there.
petromics.com. Yes, I'll
Yep.
put the
Very
link,
easy.
guys. Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
But LinkedIn is maybe the best way to contact people these days. It's public. You can send a message. I try to reply as much as possible.
Wow. So finally, if any words of wisdom further, just go ahead.
I
Tell
have
to the
no
audience.
wisdom. I am zero wisdom. I'm
There's
still learning.
nobody with zero wisdom. There's nobody with zero wisdom. I mean, you are humble, which is amazing, yes. But I think, so, because juniors really, like, I am also not very fascinated by all the time giving advice. But, youngsters genuinely are always looking up to, because they become confused. There's so much distraction these days. They have also so many possibilities that they cannot focus. And you will see a lot of PhDs, especially in when they have so much pressure. They have like especially expats, and you have been an expat, right? They have like issues with visa, then they have issues with the job market, the global economy. So in that context, whatever you have experienced, if you can give any learnings from your journey, I mean, that would be valuable. Not in a way to show off our expertise or something, like genuinely coming from a care point of view. If you care for, the next generation or the next lot of PhDs, what would be your word?
Again, I try to be careful with dispensing advice because it's very hard for us to perceive our own privilege, right? Like you mentioned, the situation of people that are coming and are in with work visas and they lose their jobs and it's hard. I've actually never had that issue because as a EU citizen working within the EU, I don't have that issue. It's so many.
If you were in the US, for example, so it can
can.
happen. Yes. Yes.
It's true. That could happen. So, but again, I can give advice based on my experience. I think one thing that worked out for me is throughout the years, I've met a lot of people. Some people, it's very few, but there's a few people you really admire. Just the way they carry themselves in life, the way they treat others, the way they help, and the way they make you laugh and teach you. So those people, I basically take their personality, try to incorporate that, and I try to be that person for younger people. Again, I was lucky enough, very lucky during my PhD to have a supervisor that was someone I admired. So I tried
Me too.
a
Yeah.
lot to be like that person. So it's a try to be that person for someone else.
Amazing. I mean, this is such a $1 million thing. So before we end our conversation, I think this is very important because many PhD students, I feel, Pedro, they're fascinated by the area of work. Oh, this is hot. We will do this, that, nanotechnology and what not. But I think so it is so important to have a nice person as your mentor or a PhD supervisor, because then you can be a happy person. You will have fun doing science. So I think choosing your mentor is so,
Oh, for a
underrated.
PhD, absolutely. I'd say it is the number one. You have to work with this person.
Absolutely.
It's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. On that positive note, Pedro, thank you so much for taking out time late evening today. It was a pleasure speaking to you. We remain in touch. And yeah, once I edit the video, I send you the link and then we take it from there. Awesome. So
Thank you, Vanis. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you
thank you,
for
Pedro.
inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
All right.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you so much. Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you.